name is Christina Milbauer. I'm 56. I own a home, and I'm an administrator for Montessori Preschool.
My name is Martin Wright. I work here as a security officer in the law school. I'm 43 years old, and I was raised in Grafton, Ohio, which is about 30 minutes west of here, and I currently live in Independence.
My name is Denise. I'm 65 years old. My occupation has been for forever a food service worker, and I used to own a home. I used to own a house.
William Berslowski. I'm age 53. I live in a regular middle class house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage. I'm an attorney.
Cool.
I work here in Beaver County.
Okay, back in 1982, I was a credit analyst at the Republic Steel Corporation. It was a fully integrated steel manufacturer that was headquartered here in Cleveland, Ohio.
I was 21 in 1982. I was, about 1981, I was in school full time and working part time at a mini mart at the gas station. And I remember that when the recession hit, that people would be, we would run out of gas. People would line up for blocks trying to get gasoline, and then they'd come up to the pumps and we'd run out inevitably because we were just slammed with people trying to get gas. And it was scarce. So I do remember that. And then I was engaged, and we decided, my fiance was trying to get a job. The mills were all closing down up here. We lived in Ohio. So we moved to Texas, and we got a job at a mill, steel mill, in Texas. And about 2 years later, the recession caught up in the South, and the mill there also closed. So it was tough financially for a long time while he tried to find another job.
Yes, so in 82, I think about a year or so before that, my father took a job. He was a factory worker. He set up machines and ran machines for production for various items. And he wanted to make some more money, and the company that he worked for wouldn't give him a raise. So he decided he was going to leave and take another position somewhere else. And when he did that, the company seemed as if it was a good company, and it was close to the house, and it paid more, and there was still overtime, so it helped out. There was 5 kids, so he definitely, and he was the one that went to work. My parents were very old school, so my mom stayed home and raised the kids and cleaned the house and cooked, and my father went to work and did like the outside activities. And then he worked there, I'm not sure exactly how long it was, but then the recession hit, and I remember gas prices going up and groceries and different things like that, because my parents would just say, like, I can't believe milk costs this, or this costs that, or, just various things. And at that time, I think gas went up to like 89 cents a gallon, which by our standards is very cheap, but in 82 that was very expensive. I still remember leaded gas back then, so you'd see the pump would say lead. But anyway, so yeah, it became very tough because his company, it always seems that manufacturing's hit the hardest when it comes to a recession. Other companies don't want to buy. Manufacturing companies can't produce, and people get laid off.
In 1982, that was my senior year of high school. My father owned a couple of businesses, the primary one being a men's clothing store. Right across the border from Ohio into Pennsylvania is Midland, Pennsylvania, and they shut the mill down in 1982. 7,200 People lost their jobs, which was that and the residual businesses were the main people that shocked off my father, so that the income in our household was significantly reduced.
I worked full time, and he ended up finding a job and learned how to operate heavy equipment, and he just retrained himself in another job, so we were able to get by, although it was tight.
The United States had seen interest prime reached 21.5%. I can remember going and getting my first mortgage. It was 16.25%. Just unbelievable for the United States to deal with interest rates that high and inflation that high.
It delayed us starting a family, and so we never did get to that point.
Was I affected? No, I don't think I was affected, simply because I'm from the working poor. The working poor. And we lived within our means, basically. We had the things that we needed, some of the things that we wanted, but it wasn't to the point where if those things were taken away from us that we got so far over our living budget that it was something that we noticed or it affected us in any way. I can't even think of anyone that it affected that I knew personally. Maybe people around us, I guess, but I don't know. Never affected me one iota. So it wasn't like I had a lot to lose.
Well, the one in '82 started with the oil crisis overseas, so with OPEC and everything. That's what started it all, and then it was just a domino effect. It affected the steel mills who needed the oil to make the steel and everything. So
the 1982 recession really hit the middle class a lot more than the 2007 did. Cleveland still had a very large number of unionized, very well-paying manufacturing jobs, and those are the people who really got hurt.
Because of the people that I dealt with on a regular basis, family and friends, or mostly friends, their families were out of work. We were fortunate in that my father was smart money-wise, so we always had food on the table, clothes on our back, roof over our head. But a lot of people that I knew and had grown up with did not have those same things and opportunities. And because my father had built up a nest egg to carry him through during those rough times, we were fortunate. We never had a brand new car, but we all had cars, but we all worked. So from an early age, we learned the value of hard work and perseverance and dedication to what you're doing, and it will pay off in the end.
It became very tough because his company, it always seems that manufacturing's hit the hardest when it comes to the recession. Other companies don't want to buy, manufacturing companies can't produce, and people get laid off. And when that happened, my father, like I said, he was only there maybe a year, and he was laid off. And I remember how at the time they were talking about, my parents were talking about unemployment, and when we had the recession in '08, they kept extending the unemployment benefits, but whereas my father in '82, it wasn't that way.
What I also remember is a lot of people didn't have rainy day funds, those emergency funds. And when they lost those paychecks, they had to rely on unemployment. And there was no extension like there was in 2007. Whatever your state unemployment was, 13 weeks or 20 weeks or 26, that's all you got. And then you were on your own.
You could get food stamps. We got this big brick of government cheese that was, quote, American cheese. And I just remember that he had a really hard time trying to find a job because he had been working in a factory for 20-some years. Plus, he was a veteran. And even with that protected status, he couldn't get a job back then. And so my mom, she ended up going to work and just worked like a retail type job and tried to provide. And my father, it was weird because it was a total role reversal for my father and mother. Because my father was staying home, my mother was going to work, and so my father like got on us about doing our homework and doing this and doing that, you know, like dads can. So it was really different. I just remember opening the fridge one time and just seeing that government cheese in there. And I remember thinking, and not at that time, but later on, I never wanted to be in that spot again.
A lot of the foreign steel was coming into the country, and the steel mill in Midland was trying to compete with that. And our wages and benefits that we have standardized in this country, so that a family can live off a standard wage. The foreign countries that are pumping steel into this country don't have those same things. So they don't have to worry about health care, pollution, environmental issues, or the other things, and the government subsidizes those programs, as far as I know.
Jimmy Carter brought in Paul Volcker, and Paul Volcker decided to, Ronald Reagan decided to keep him on as the chairman, and Reagan backed him, and he said the only way we're going to get rid of this inflation and these high interest rates is to send the country into a severe economic recession. And by raising the interest rates that high, it did put us into a severe economic recession.
I remember them talking about on the news, you know, like 60 Minutes or something like that. I remember them saying about trickle-down economics and whether it'll work or not, and obviously it doesn't, and they keep wanting to go back to it, and it never works. You can't give somebody who has something and expect them to give that to somebody else. But I also don't believe that you can just give it to somebody who has nothing and expect them to make something out of it. I think where it comes into play is that we need to focus on small businesses and letting them grow and encouraging companies in some way to modernize and update and to grow their payroll.
Oh, Ronald Reagan's fiscal spending and Paul Volcker's Federal Reserve. Volcker did a really nice job on managing interest rates and inflation once he got it under control. Reagan did a great job with the tax cuts. It really stimulated the economy. I think another thing that helped too, beginning in the 80s, is when the technological revolution started. It really didn't start sprinting until the 90s. But you know, in the 1980s, Excel, Lotus 1-2-3, its predecessor, and Word, and those type of things came out. And all of a sudden, you know, literally, we went from doing things on ruled paper with a pencil to a keyboard for the first time. And so I think technology really created a lot of jobs, reduced the cost of manufacturing a lot, made us a much more productive workforce, and that really helped a lot.
Well, we had already gone through the economic downturn in '82, and the recovery back to that economic times has never occurred here in Beaver County or in eastern Ohio.
2007, I think the only thing that changed was the fact that I had bought a house and I could no longer afford the house.
I was going through a divorce before that. I was working part-time as an aide at the Montessori school that I'm now administrator of. And I was going to school part-time at Robert Morris.
I was working for a juvenile detention center at the time, and we could get overtime. It was almost unlimited, you know, and the benefits were really good. So if you had the desire to work, then you could double your income. And what I would do is I would work a lot of overtime and try to bank that, and I would try to bank my compensated time so that way I wouldn't have to pay so much in taxes, and it was like a little nest egg. And I learned that from the early 80s to try to put something away.
I had, at that time, I was, had established a law office and had, I was also working for Beaver County in the public defender's office. So I had a standard set, stable income through the county, and I had built up a nice practice in my private law office so that I was able to maintain substantial income. It did reduce, and we had to adjust our spending habits, and then realized that we had, prior to that, been spending way too frivolously, and it puts a reality of life factor back in, and you learn what's important, what are needs and what are wants.
I already had a family established, so just trying to maintain a household, being a single mom, that was very difficult. And watching my investment portfolio basically be cut in half, and that's money I was planning to have for retirement, which I lost. So instead of being at the beginning of starting a family and having those types of worries and expenses, now I was kind of almost towards the end of my, not the end of my career, but kind of midstream of my career, and hoping to plan for a future retirement, which I had to kind of pretty much knew I was going to be working a lot longer.
Well, instead of going on a couple of vacations a year, didn't go on any vacations. Instead of going out to eat a couple of times a week, didn't go out to eat. All the extras that we take for granted in today's society, we didn't have. I made sure that my children had food, clothes, shelter. At that time, they were not able to drive, so there was no need for vehicles. But you learn how to spend in a more proper manner and try to build up a nest egg so that if there was an economic downturn such as in 1982 when I was a senior in high school, you can weather the storm, whereas most people spend frivolously.
I wouldn't say that it was the recession per se. Maybe I, again, stepped off, a bit off a little bit more than I could chew, pretty much. It wasn't for a lack of trying not to bite off as much as I could chew, because I tried desperately to get everything within my range of what I could afford to do. But it was something that owning a house was something that I wanted to do before I left this earth. So I put myself out there, and I think I was there maybe about 3 or 4 years when things changed as far as, because owning a house has a lot, it has a lot to do with things happening in a house, roof, and different things like that. And as a single woman, a poor single working woman, then, you know, issues did arise. But I did look for people that could come and like be roommates and help me until I was out of that bind. But I don't think it had anything to do with the recession at all. I just think it had to do with the time that I made the move to do what I did.
And then when I went to go buy a house, I was looking for a house in Parma. And usually the houses in Parma, the little bungalows, would go for maybe, say, anywhere from $90,000 to $130,000. Well, unfortunately, the housing bubble hadn't popped yet, and houses that were valued at, say, $90,000 were now valued at 110. You know, it was insane how expensive these houses were becoming. And for no reason, I just looked at them and I'm like, how can you ask $150,000 for this house? And the basement isn't finished, or this or that, or the roof has a leak or something. But they were able to command that price for whatever reason. And come to find out that reason was because they were doing the subprime loans, and everybody could get a loan.
Well, my pension with the county remained, and it's set, and they are required under state and federal laws to maintain set income levels off of it, set interest rates. That did not affect me. My personal assets tanked, and I lost probably 50% or more, which gets me back to need to create a better savings plan and learn not to spend money frivolously. And if you want something extra, you save and you wait and you make sure that at the time you're ready to spend the money, that it's a worthwhile decision to spend it, and making sure that you have the money to spend and not put stuff on credit for future payments, that you have the set money available to you. I've tried to maintain that, so if I don't have the money, then I don't need something.
2007, I thought that was more of a high-class problem. It really hurt the people on the very high end or on the very low end. On the very high end, you had people who had second homes, or they were speculating in real estate. They were, investing in a condominium with the idea of selling it in a year or 2 years, because some areas housing prices were increasing 20 or 30% a year. And my own personal opinion is, whenever you speculate, you go in with a 50-50 chance of winning or losing. It's a lot different than investing. When you invest, you expect to win because you're looking at the long term. Speculation, you're looking at the very short term. So a lot of those people got hurt, but it wasn't devastating to them. They might have gone from being worth $4 million down to $3 million. $3 million is still a lot of money, okay? The guy in the middle class really didn't get hurt. The people who got hurt, but they really didn't lose a lot, were the subprime borrowers.
It was hit more in houses that were cheaper or more affordable.
Those were people who couldn't afford a home because they didn't qualify, didn't have a credit score, didn't have enough of a big down payment, and the market let them in. So they had very little at risk from a financial point of view in the homes. Were their lives disrupted? Were they evicted? Were they foreclosed upon? Yeah, and I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. But from a financial point of view, they didn't have anything invested.
And I think a lot of people that were living beyond their means were affected a lot more because they had higher mortgage payments they really couldn't afford. So
I thought the house was very obtainable as far as if things had not have changed, because I did lose my job and I was unemployed, and I think that unemployment, that time being unemployed, was the time that I kind of came into a crisis pretty much. But no, the house was more than affordable. The mortgage, the mortgage included property tax and insurance, so that took it up a lot higher. Now, if it was just the mortgage in itself, I would have maintained that no problem whatsoever, but I have to pay property taxes and I have to have insurance. And having that all combined within the mortgage took it up to, a place where it was kind of hard to manage at one time.
The housing market, though, a lot of it happened, I believe, during President Clinton's administration. I could be wrong. They allowed a lot more freedoms in the banking industry, such as adjustable rate mortgages, that instead of people putting away the extra money that when they're making raises, so when the interest rate on their adjustable rate jumped 3 to 5 or 7%, they had the funds available to continue paying for their homes. They spent frivolously that extra money and ended up losing their houses. They were overspending or overbuying, and it unnaturally inflated the market because of the adjustable rate. So that a home that was worth $100,000 miraculously turned out to be $150,000, and it was clearly overvalued. Then the paper that the mortgage was sold 2, 3, and 4 times and bundled and packaged, and then whoever's holding the paper on the last great day, 2007, when people couldn't afford to make the payments anymore, it crushed them.
When I bought my house in Parma, I probably paid about at least $10,000 to $15,000 more than what it was worth. And when the housing market popped, unfortunately, that was about the same time that I got divorced from my first wife. So when we went to go sell the house that we paid, say, $120 for, was now worth no more than 75,000. And because there was such a flood of houses on the market, especially in Parma, those little bungalows, you could pick one up for $65,000, and but you couldn't flip it. You couldn't. Yeah, if you were going to live in it, then that would be fine. But it ended up that the house we ended up losing the house because there was just so much with it that with the divorce and everything, the judge actually looked at me and said, he said, and I was wearing my detention center uniform, so we were, county employees, and he looked at me and he said, sir, he's like, I know it's hard to give it up, but sometimes it's better to give it up so you can get out from underneath of it than try to let it drag you down to the bottom. And I agreed with the judge, and we had to let it go.
I think because of the first experience, I never really put myself into a situation where I lived beyond my means. So when it did hit the second time, I didn't feel it as hard as I did the first time.
It wasn't hard. It was never really hard other than that, loss of a certain amount of income into unemployment. But again, I don't think the recession had any effect on that. That's just the way things were going for me in my life at that time. So, I found some place to live. I always worked, so I always had some income coming in. And it was an experience that I wanted to try, and I did try it, but I had loved for it to still be in that house and have a home to this point. Yeah, I would have, because some of the time I try not to think about it because then you have regrets and you don't want to have regrets. So,
in 2007, we didn't have, in this region, because we didn't have the huge industry that other regions have, there wasn't as much of the downturn.
I would say the second time around, it wasn't as difficult as it was the first time because I had been down that road before. So I knew the first time it happened, I would go to the grocery store with a calculator to make sure I didn't overspend what I had to spend for groceries. The second time, it didn't come down to that, but I was very frugal about my purchases.
that's the surprising thing. It never affected my credit score because probably it was in the time where there were a lot of people going under in their houses and stuff, and there were a lot of companies or places that would help you manage your mortgage and try to help you keep that house and things of that sort. But those things I never really got into. Once it was, I'm just not one of those that look in the past and like, you know what I'm saying, let those type of things affect me. But and then I was living with my ex-fiance, and we were living in his house, so I was like, okay.
Back at that time, there was panic, there was empathy. I think it was a little overblown. I think now we can look at it 10 years ago and say, yeah, a lot of people were hurt, but I think the financial devastation was much more severe in '82 than it was in 2007.
2007, with the banks and the government backing up the economy because it was too difficult, and the total economics of our country would have collapsed had the government not stepped in and taken over the banking and backed up all the loans. So that 2007 was not as bad, at least in this region, as people had thought it would, or it was in other parts of the country.
But other than that, it was fine. I was all right.
And I think we bounced back a lot quicker from 2007, 2008 than we did in 1982. It took us till about probably the early 90s to really get back after 1982.
Government came in, they made some super banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, PNC, and probably 5 other ones. And the government backed all these bad mortgages, and now we're recovering.
You know, there's still some excesses in the market right now. You know, there's a lot of subprime lending in student loans because you don't have to qualify to get a student loan. You get it, regardless of your ability to pay it back or not. Some of that's probably going to come back to haunt us. Will it cause a disruption? Yeah, but it's going to be nothing like the home market. You know, I see another bubble maybe forming in the subprime auto industry. Again, will it be disruptive? Yes, but it's not going to cause near the problem that we had in 2007, 2008. We understand what subprime is. We understand how to manage the risk in it.
I really don't know. I guess, I don't know. I don't know what would have prevented them.
I found the 82 to be much more devastating than the 2007. Are individual institutions doing a good job? I think most of them are, but there's probably a couple out there that, you know, are, as Winston Churchill said, are swimming naked, and when the tide comes out, we'll know they don't have a bathing suit on. And, you know, we'll have to clean that up. But, you know, I think we learned the majority of our lessons in 2007, 2008.
People need to start figuring out how to save. You don't, just because you get a paycheck, you should probably put some money away, because the economy is not always going to be flourishing, and you have to be able to weather the bad times and save during the good times, so that you can maintain a set lifestyle that you enjoy.
My advice is to them is, first of all, find a career that pays you, that allows you to be independent and to reach the goals that you like, if not all of the goals, some of the goals, and work on that aspect of your life, whether you want a family or not, or you want to own a home, or whether you just want to travel. Pick a career that can provide you and help you to do those things. But if you have a passion for something else that is not going to help you get those things or accumulate those things, I would suggest that you go on that path of, okay, I'm going to give myself 20 years, 25 years, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to save my money, I'm going to own my home, I have a family, and do those things. Invest your money wisely, and or save wisely. And then at some point in your life, after 25, 30 years, then you can say, okay, I'm going to do what I really passionately want to do, whether it be cleaning up random paper off the street, you know what I'm saying? Just something that, whatever your passion is, because I think a lot of young people focus on their passion and they don't think about, okay, I gotta have a roof over my head, I gotta eat, I need a car, I have utilities to pay, and then you get caught up in this whole vicious circle and you end up like, excuse me, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? So try to put some time, some years into maybe working a job that you really don't like to, because a lot of people do that. But if you see the rainbow at the end of all that, and you know that you can do what your passion is, just suck it up and do it. That's all.
I wish I would have saved more money, and that's always going to be the thing. Since the Great Depression in '29 to any other recession that's happened afterwards, you got to be able to have money put away somewhere that you can access it, even if it's little by little, to help support if you lose your job or something. You don't want to have to go and automatically claim benefits or anything like that right away. You should be able to have money to where you can survive for at least a couple months, you know, even if your belt's tightened, you know, to be able to survive a couple months and not have to worry about your house, losing a house or a vehicle. Don't be so quick about buying a house or a vehicle. You know, if you have a good running car, if that's what you can afford, you have to. The one thing I've always been taught was to live within your means, and you have to be able to do that. If you live beyond your means and you think that that's a good thing to do, wait until something happens, and then all of that will be taken away. It's not yours anyway if it's on a credit card, so it doesn't really matter. But saving money is one of the best things I think. I think that the average person should do, you know. And if you can save, if you can learn to save money, then you can learn to do other things with money, such as spend it, invest it.
Do your due diligence. The problem with 2007, 2008 is everybody trusted everybody else. The investors bought the bonds with those bad mortgages in it because a credit rating agency told them it was a good bond, and it wasn't. The credit rating agencies were wrong. The investment banks bought those mortgages from mortgage originators because the mortgage originator said the guidelines you gave us, every single one of these mortgages meet the guideline, and they didn't. So, do we need expert opinions? Yes. Do we need some kind of credit scoring? Yes. But you don't rely solely on someone else's opinion. You have to get into the weeds. You have to read the documents. You have to have a really good understanding of what you're about to invest in. You don't do it because your neighbor's doing it. You don't do it because some banker told you, hey, it's going to work out. It's just fine. I think we're seeing that with Bitcoin. That's the problem with Bitcoin. Everybody ran into it and all of a sudden woke up and said, wait a minute, what is this? What am I doing? You mean there's no guarantee someone has to accept this as payment? We're seeing a correction there. So that's the one thing I learned, and I think everybody should learn. Do your own due diligence.